So we've had numerous sponsors that I've talked about and identified as being mission critical to today. And I mean it. We couldn't have done these things. We couldn't have had today without them. And absolutely on par with every other sponsor has been NSERC. Stands for the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada. Probably a lot of you have heard of that organization. They're instrumental to industry development through the colleges, through the universities, through direct contact with clients. We actually have a representative who's going to say a few words, Dr. Alexandra Reid, and she's from Vancouver. If I could steal a tad bit of your thunder by just indicating, NSERC aims to make Canada a country of discoverers and innovators for the benefit of all Canadians. They support university students in their advanced studies. They promote and support discovery research and foster innovation by encouraging Canadian companies to participate and invest in post-secondary research projects. So really a key element to what we're doing today and what we're all trying to do to help build industry. So Alexandra, if you don't mind saying a few words.
Right, afternoon everyone. Definitely a pleasure to be one of the sponsors for today's event. I've never seen a virtual ribbon cutting before, and definitely not going to forget that either. So just to give you a sense of what NSERC does, we're one of the Tri-Council federal funding agencies. We fund science and engineering, so that's both at the university level and at the college level. NSERC's budget, just to put it into perspective, is $1.1 billion. Yes, billion with a B. Looking at where we come from, I come from research partnerships, and that means partnerships between academic institutions and industry typically. So about 30% of that $1 billion is going towards research partnerships. Looking at the provincial level, we have about $153 million that's invested from NSERC in British Columbia. If you look at the different sectors that NSERC funds, we have about 40% of that is spent in ICT, which is Information and Communications Technology, and manufacturing. The split between ICT and manufacturing is about 27% to ICT, and about 13% is spent within manufacturing research. If we look at the people that we invest in, over about 1,400 professors have received grants from NSERC. Over 540 companies in BC have received research benefits from partnering on NSERC grants. Companies themselves have put forward over $19.5 million of their dollars towards doing partnership research grants. And Camosun College, I'm happy to say, has had over $1 million invested in it from NSERC. And these can be in the form of grants. We have engaged grants, which are sort of an entry level for a college to partner with a company, and they're worth about $25K. We have the Applied Research and Development grants, the ARD grants, and those can be scalable anywhere from $10,000 up to $500,000 for companies, and companies would put in cash and in kind to do the research. And as Tim mentioned earlier, Camosun is not owning that IP. They are giving the benefits of doing the research here and getting the expertise here and giving it back to the companies. And the last thing I'd just like to talk about is we've been talking about training the next generation here and experiential learning. And NSERC believes very strongly in that. We have awards called Experience Awards. And these are meant to go to undergraduate students, science and engineering in bachelor programs, to do co-ops, paid co-ops, half offset by NSERC and half by the companies they work for. And this is a terrific resource if you're thinking of taking on co-op students but didn't know if you could afford it. It's a great way to offset the cost because NSERC can help with that as well. So I'll leave it for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you'll be setting up a funding table in the back? The money table? Mm-hmm. 10%, that's right? 10% for, okay. I took the liberty of taking my jacket off. I thought it was okay. We are still live streaming. We're getting great response via the internet. Seriously Creative has done a great job of reposting and retweeting. So actually this message is reaching a broad audience, not just us. And that's part of what we were trying to do today. I have recently met our next speaker, and very lucky to have met him because along with everyone who's talking today, these folks are passionate about trying to help education and build labor market workforce for our manufacturing sector on the island. And they take their entire day off, so that's certainly an indication of that kind of commitment. Doug Pause is the Senior Vice President, Operations of Coastland Wood Industries out of Nanaimo. And he'll talk a little bit about this global impact this company has. We keep talking global, global, global. This is no kidding. The companies and people involved today are on a global status. And I'm not kidding, live streamers. For the past 22 years, Doug has been involved in the forest industry, starting in the medium density fiber board industry. He was surrounded by new technology and was fortunate enough to be involved in the creation and development of new products that help shape the industry. Obviously a key industry for British Columbia. In 2011, Doug joined the team at Coastland, just in time to once again help develop and utilize technology and implement innovative ideas to help shape the future of that business. Today, Coastland leads the industry in innovation and prides itself on bringing many firsts in technology to North America. Doug's topic today will be the potholes of innovation when you step outside the box. Thank you, Doug.
Wow. Sure buttered me up there. Couple things. First off, I want to thank Barry and John. Unfortunately, what I am disappointed in is there wasn't any wine for lunch. So I'm usually a nervous speaker, so I needed that wine.
There was no public wine.
Oh.
There is wine
Okay.
somewhere.
Yeah, I'm whining right now. So don't mind me. I tend to ramble on when I get nervous, but
Don't be nervous. The person who's really nervous right now is Barry.
That's all right, Barry. I can wing it. And that. But this makes the presentation. No. What I want to talk about today is there's no different from what everybody's been talking about. Some of the challenges that we face in our industry, specifically on Vancouver Island, and in terms of labor and challenges of recruiting, of training, and things like that. As we move forward in technology, it becomes even more important as we go along. I want to talk a little bit about Coastline, just so you understand who we are and what we do, and why we believe in innovation and where that has brought us to in this point in our life cycle. We're a veneer manufacturer, so we take logs and we peel it into veneer for the plywood and LVL industry. Nothing sexy, nothing glamorous about it, and so everybody that's in the higher tech industries here, I applaud you, and I wish I could grow a diamond, but unfortunately we would just peel logs. But believe it or not, the technology involved in that is quite high, and it's quite diverse. Coastland is we've been founded on innovation. We pride ourselves in the fact that in 29 years of operation, we've not once had a layoff or a shutdown, and that's you don't see that on the coast of British Columbia at all, and not even through the downturns. So we're pretty proud of that, and part of that is through innovation and what we do and what we ask our employees to do day in, day out. So how does this work here? Am I pushing the right button? There we go. There we go. Okay, so back in 1988 is when we first peeled our first log, and that started as a dream of a gentleman named Don McKay that came down to Nanaimo and looked at what was going on in the forest industry, and there was a whole bunch of product. When I say product, I mean logs in the bush that were left that weren't desirable for the sawmilling industry. So he decided to take that log, the undesirable log, and turn it into veneer. And so we took a product that was relatively cheap at the time, and through a credit card and not a lot of capital and investors, we put together a veneer line that started off slowly. It was tough to break into the marketplace. It was tough to break into the marketplace and try and develop yourself as a key contributor. This marketplace is typically American in the Pacific Northwest and down into Oregon. The plywood industry is primarily based out of Eugene, Oregon. And so to break into that industry was very difficult. So it was the first couple of years were very tough. The management group did everything they could to persevere, push through, basically on a shoestring budget. But they pushed through, and you know, one of the challenges we had on the island, which I don't think they really took into account, was getting product off the island. We started off with using BC ferries, and so as everybody can imagine, the cost on that was ridiculous. But they pushed through. They managed to create a cost structure and a business that was able to sustain it until the market picked up and they were able to break into the the plywood and LVL market down in Oregon. So as we get into 1990, the whole atmosphere for the company changed. We decided that we were going to try and be creative and look for different ways to shape our business, to save money, become more cost effective, and develop new products. First thing we did was we started looking at what's called a clipping trash gate. So now a clipping trash gate, for those of you that don't know, is when a log is peeled, and I've got some video of logs being peeled here for you because there's not a lot of people that have seen a veneer mill in operation. A clipping trash gate takes the front end of the log as it's being peeled and it clips it down into the waste conveyor. What was happening before is all that waste was working its way down to the green chain line, which would cause problems, downtime, jam-ups, all sorts of things. So we started working on clipping trash gate. Now this was totally new, and this would clip the front end of the ribbon while the veneer was peeling at 1,000 feet per minute. And that, so very, very fast. And that, so in-house we designed, we patented and built the first clipping trash gate. And through that technology, we sold the patent off to Co-Industries. And now in North America, in virtually every veneer operation, you'll find a clipping trash gate. So that was implemented, started from Coastland. That was kind of the start of our, hey, this innovation stuff is pretty cool. We can do some fun here, and we can really make a name for ourselves. So that was a trademark of Coastline in the beginning, and that was all through innovation. And it wasn't just a couple guys; it was the whole company that stepped forward and helped design and build this. There was from before my time at the company, but there was many employees that spent many hours standing at that gate saying, "Oh no, we got to change the angle here, change the angle there." But it was a complete team effort. In the year 2000. That's when we decided that expansion was necessary to keep going on. Now, we could just add another lathe line, but the problem was those cheap logs that we were getting beforehand, all of a sudden everybody wanted a piece of those cheap logs. So now the next best thing was the small logs, small chip and saw logs, 5-inch up to 8-inch logs that we could afford to purchase. So we designed and built basically another lathe line designed around a small block criteria. This lathe here that we designed and built with Co-Industries turned out to be, and is still today, one of the fastest in the world. And it was the first generation of small block lathes. We peel upwards of 8,000 blocks a shift on this particular lathe. and that. So to put things into perspective, throughout the course of a day between all of our lathe lines, we peel about 26,000 blocks a day in that. So it's about 2,500 cubic meters, and again, to put that into perspective, just for a visual sake, that's about 60 to 70 logging trucks of wood a day in that. So a very, very, very busy place in that. Then we hit 2008, just like everybody else. The whole world fell apart. What was Coastline going to do in 2008? All of a sudden, the LVL market went away, the plywood market went away, just as much as everybody else's markets went away. The ownership group decided that we wanted to focus on maintaining employment. No matter how much money we lost, we were going to try and push through and persevere through this. And we wanted to become stronger when the economy improved and make sure we hit it at the right upswing in the economy. How do you do that? How do you predict that? It's just kind of like predicting what Trump's going to do right now. In 2010, we started to see glimmers of what was coming at us in terms of market, and we made the decision in 2010 to once again expand to a third lathe line. Now, everybody in the industry thought we were nuts. You know, this is not something you do with the economy the way it is, but you know what, we thought it was still the right thing to do. The market was still down. Timing is everything on these type of projects, and we thought, you know what, let's pucker up and let's do this. So we made a design on a traditional North American lathe, same idea that we went with on the previous in 2000 expansion. But now to understand our site, we have 10 acres. So 10 acres of property to process through about 1.1 million cubic meters of wood a year is a pretty difficult task. We've got, at that time, we have 2 lathe lines and 2 log deck lines. And again, to understand our site as well, we've got the 10 acres, but we've got a rail line that runs right through the middle of it. So we've separated into 2 facilities. We've got a log deck. We process all our logs, cut all our logs, send it up over top of the railway track into our veneer mill. So we've got some unique challenges. In our veneer mill is about, I would say we've got a total of 3.5 acres there. So very, very tight constraints. So we had to be creative in how we designed this. So we designed this North American lathe. Actually, we had engineers involved, we had everybody involved, and we sat down and looked at the budget and went, yeah, this isn't going to happen. And it just wasn't going to happen for a small company to put that much capital in at a time where we really didn't know what the market was going to do. Would have been potentially suicide for us. So then we started thinking a little bit more outside the box. And it's about the time that I got hired at that time, and you know, coming from the MDF industry, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with the MDF industry, but it's very heavy to the European sector. Europeans are very forward-thinking in terms of you know, the forest industry and what they do, MDF being one of them. We decided to look in other places. Where else do they build lathe lines? Asia. Asia has a huge plywood economy. In China, Japan, Indonesia, all through there. Who's the main people that create lathes down there? So we went to a company named Minen Manufacturing out of Japan. Now it was twofold, because at the same time, knowing the US market was down, how do we get into the Asian market? There's no other company shipping veneer into Asia right now and being successful about it. So how do you get in there? We needed to understand what the Asians were looking for, and traditionally they're very picky on their quality and what they look for. So we did a lot of research, did a lot of digging, and we came up with a Japanese lathe that we wanted to put into the mill. Now, inside our mill we've got 2 lathe lines. In between each lathe line we've got 22 feet. The Japanese lathe line was 21.5 feet, and so it fit perfectly. So we took a shoehorn and stuffed that line in there. So we've got 3 lathe lines in the spot that really should, at a maximum, be 2. You can argue that as well when you go and look at traditional veneer facilities. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to maximize every square foot of our property and what we do. Again, keeping in mind that we have huge cost disadvantages compared to the rest of the industry. And when I say that, I mean, I talk about $3 a thousand, $4 a thousand, but to the veneer industry, that's huge. And we don't have a business unless we can overcome that somehow through manufacturing and increase productivity to reduce our costing and that. So we went with a Japanese lathe line, and this was a unique install. And through this install, we ran the mill 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, didn't miss 1 minute of production uptime. It was a very successful installation. In fact, we set production records during the whole time and that. And we took 32 containers from Japan, unloaded them, and brought them in one by one into the mill and set them up. It took a total of, once the containers got there, 3 weeks to install the full thing. And it was in full production. We had dump trucks, cement trucks, backhoes, everything inside the mill going through this. So a very creative, very challenging workspace. But again, this went back to what we needed to do to survive, and it's through adding technology. Now, this technology in Japan, now I don't know if anybody's had dealings with the Asian market and some of the countries in Europe and how rigid they are. When they develop something, that's what you get. There's no, we don't make changes, we don't do anything different for you in that. So we went back and forth, and they ended up, they wanted this to be the showcase in North America. This was their big chance to break into North America. So they capitulated on a number of different items, and we've got the first high-speed mean lathe line in North America. So with this came a whole bunch of challenges. Very high to the PLC programming, very extensive electrical components, very simple mechanical and that. But the way of the future in the forest industry is all electrical. And how are we going to be able to maintain that and to service that? Fortunately, this particular company has been fantastic. We call them at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, and by noon on Wednesday, they've already flown over and are helping us out with it. So it's been a fantastic relationship, and one that we couldn't afford to do anything. One that we couldn't afford to not have. And part of that, the reasoning for that is the fact that we can't find skilled tradesmen in the electrical side that have the PLC programming training, that have the experience that's necessary to maintain this equipment. Fortunately for us, we have the relationship with the Japanese folks, number one. Number two, I've got probably the best maintenance manager in North America for PLC programming. Now, if I didn't have him or he gets hit by a bus tomorrow, I guess I become chief PLC programmer, and God help us in that. So part of this, it created a different structure for us. We could peel down our logs down to 2 inches, 1.9 inches to be exact. Part of our product line was, actually, if I take back a little bit and I go back into the mid-1990s, all of the product that we peel, we utilize. But back in the early 1990s, we didn't. When we get down to the peeler core, they call it, there's no value in it. We chipped it, or we would give it to the employees, or we would sell it for a quarter a piece, and there was no value in it. And in about 2012, while all this was going on, we made the decision to focus on that business. There's a huge agricultural business in North America, one that needs fence posts, that needs tree stakes, and everything to pistachio stakes and that. And so we were going to try and focus on that. So we then took all of that, the product that we are now producing, 1.9-inch cores, and we developed a system that peeled it down, automatically trimmed it, sized it, pointed it and capped it, and created a huge market for fence posts and tree stakes in North America. We're now the largest tree stake fence post manufacturer around. We produce about 7 million a year in that. And so we've more or less captured this whole market and developed that. But again, here's a product that it's been staring us in the face for 15 years. And All of a sudden, the light bulb came on. And through that is through the innovative thinking, the creative thinking of, and it wasn't us, it was the employees that came up and said, hey, you know what, our slush fund from those cores, what do you mean your slush fund? Oh yeah, no, Don McKay way back in the day said that any cores that we sell, we just put in a slush fund because they're not worth anything. No. We've taken that business from a gross sales of less than $1 million a year to well over $12 million a year, and that just from a waste product. So again, that was through the creativity of our maintenance staff. Our maintenance staff built and designed everything in-house. I don't have any video of this. I'm very sensitive about showing that because nobody else in the industry is able to do what we're doing. So we've done many other things with that product line, but we're just kind of tipping the iceberg right now. Where am I? I've got all my papers mixed up now.
That's okay. We're probably...
So this is a video of the mean and lathe line as it peels. Completely different technology from the traditional lathe line that you saw in the last video. More or less like a squeeze box. Very simple, but everything is pretty much run on robotics. It's all computer controlled, everything about it. The operator just has to do a great job of sitting and monitoring it, and that's all we want them to do. So again, I go back to the pothole of innovation that I pothole because I was trying to come up with a creative lingo of some of our challenges, but pothole of innovation is exactly that. We want to continue to improve. We want to continue to innovate, but we don't have the backing. We don't have the resources to, make sure that we've got the training, the expertise in-house or recruited to do that. And again, I know earlier we were talking about how we recruit to the island, and there's only so much margin in wood products. So increasing wages is not a viable option. Albeit we do pay higher than anybody else in the industry in our facility, and part of that payment is for creativity. We want the guys to be innovative and creative. So that's one of our challenges is we can't afford to pay what the oil fields are paying. We can't afford to pay what some of the sexy industries are paying, but at the end of the day, where do we go? How do we do this? We now have to send employees all the way into Alberta and back east to get some of the specific training that we could do here and that. So it's become a real pothole, a real challenge for us in that. So one of the things that we started focusing on was apprenticeships. Now, we take pride in our apprenticeships, and that's been our most successful way of improving our business, of creating that atmosphere of belonging with the employees. And we've been very successful. Most of our top tradesmen have come up through the apprenticeship program that we've put on for them. It has become more challenging as we've gone along. The last 2 apprenticeships that we've had to do, we've had to send them all the way up to Kitimat or Prince George just to get the schooling and that. So again, here we've got a number of educational facilities on Vancouver Island in the Lower Mainland, but we can't provide the training when it's needed. And so we're having to send quite a ways away and at great cost to smaller companies that can't quite afford to do that. And I'm going to assume that we're not the only ones that have that issue in that. So since then we've kind of decided, you know what, screw it. We're going to throw caution to the wind. We're going to keep going forward. When you slow down, everybody starts to pass you. And in our industry, we've become one of the largest players in the plywood LVL industry, and the prospects of products, everything going forward, look good. So we don't want to sit back and not do anything. So we've kind of thrown caution to the wind, and we've put in our first automatic strapping line. And this is based on all robotics, and it's the first one in North America. This was from a company out of Italy, so yeah, we just finished installing this in July. Again, should I lose my maintenance manager, we're in big trouble. But again, when I talk about potholes of innovation, instead of going slow and kind of dodge them, sometimes it's best just to speed up and blow right over top of them, and that's what we're trying to do. And currently, we're also in a $15 million upgrade to our log deck. Another first in North America. This is the first complete European log line, and it's from Austria, Springer Technologies. The technology is fantastic, very, very heavy to electrics. There's no hydraulics on this system at all, and so the technology involved is fantastic. The scanning technology is amazing. Everything gets graded automatically, and there's no operator interaction in that. I'll show you an example here, if I can get it.
Doug, get close to.
I'm getting close, okay. Okay, well, I'll skip that video there. So, why jump over the potholes? Why race right over top of them? Our big thing for us, for our company, is our employees. Again, I don't want to be the person that breaks the string of 29 years of laying off employees. It's important to us, it's important to our employee group. We want to be the leaders in the industry. We want to continue to lead by example. I think if every company takes that attitude and focus on the innovation and the technologies that's out there and take the blinders off. You know, the biggest thing that I see in our industry and in most industries is everybody puts the blinders on and thinks this is the way it's got to be. North America is the best. They make the best equipment, bigger, better, stronger. When in reality, there's a whole world out there, and that's what we focused on. Not to say that the equipment and the technology in North America isn't, but there's a whole world out there. And so we've taken a different approach. Again, when I go to conventions in the plywood industry, I'm kind of the young kid in there, even with my gray hair. And everybody thinks we're nuts. And yeah, you're just a bunch of punks. You guys don't know what you're doing. But you know, at the end of the day, we've kind of taken over that industry and we've become the leaders. Now everybody is all of a sudden, Mean and Lathes are going in. Springer equipment is going in. The strapping system that we just installed is starting to get interest. So if we don't know what we're doing, maybe we're doing something right. But anyways, the focus for us has always been about employees. And you know, one of the things that we focus on and are very proud of is the fact that it's part of our core values. Innovation is part of our core values. And we encourage all of our employees to come up with different ideas. And every single idea that we've had has come from our employee group. You know, it's easy for management to take credit for things and all that, but unless you engage your employees to become creative and innovative, you're not going to get anywhere. But again, you know, the big thing that I want to stress with this whole thing is innovation and the fact that, you know, somehow, some way, we need to be able to get the education, the training, and the ability to recruit onto Vancouver Island somehow. And so I'm all ears and
all answers, hopefully, will be all answers.
and all answers, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Doug, do you want to just the amount of expertise and knowledge on manufacturing on this island is extraordinary. Oh, where'd it go? I keep losing my speakers. I need one of them, you know, one of them things. Thank you. That was fascinating. And we tend to think sometimes wood industry development is not here on the island, that it might be up north. No, it ain't. It's here, big time. So great work. Thank you for reviewing that, and I'm sure you'll have questions. Now we're going to go to panel. I'll do a quick introduction of our panel members. So if Gary and Robin, if you could come up, please. Yep. Yes, yours working?
Hello?
Yeah, perfect. Did you want to sit down? Or no. Did you want to relax? I've recently met Gary Powers, to my immediate right, president of Promac. Although I've been working with Promac now for a couple years in our labor market work. Great company out of Duncan. trying to adapt to a new world, new markets, a forest product industry changing all the time. So very, very happy that you can join us today. Gary himself has a diverse background in mechanical engineering, project management, and entrepreneurship, and uniquely suited to lead a diverse company such as Promec. Gary became owner and president in 2016 and has set out to build on the strong foundation of over 60 experienced and knowledgeable team members and loyal customer base. Based in Duncan, Promec has a long industry on the island, dating back as far as the 1940s. Really, servicing the forest industry. Man,
Before my time.
I am learning something new every second. Over the last couple of decades, the company has diversified into a recognized leader in mechanical design and manufacturing for industry, sawmill wear parts, and machinery, and an OEM for excavator mounted brush cutters and mulchers. Wow, cool. Thanks for joining us today.
It's a busy place.
To my far right is Robin Ambrose, Director of People and Wellness at Viking Air. Viking, and in particular Robin, has been passionate about helping develop the aerospace industry, the manufacturing industry, and employee development, and has been helping with the variety of projects that I force you into, constantly volunteering Robin to do stuff. But without Viking, it would be hard to have a unified voice for manufacturing on Lower Vancouver Island. So to Viking, thank you, both of you, Robin, David, for your ongoing and lengthy support in all of our activities. Robin herself was born and raised in an aviation family. Robin has a passion for aerospace that has led her to a 19-year career with Viking. She is accountable for all the HR, labor relations, and safety activities for 600 employees across multiple plants located in Victoria, BC, Calgary, Alberta. I don't know how the hell you had time to get here today, but that's a big job. As Viking has grown and expanded exponentially over the last decade, Robin has navigated unique and distinctively VI challenges on how to recruit and build a world-class aerospace manufacturing workforce, something we will hear about throughout the afternoon. She has worked locally, provincially, and federally to ensure the long-term sustainability of skilled aerospace workers to meet industry demand. Robin Ambrose, Gary Powers, thank you for being our panel members. So we had like a first session, and we don't entirely have like a sort of a template for this. But if you could speak a little bit to your company, a little bit about your labor relations issues, if you want to interact with our speaker, please, by all means, and then we'll open it up for our audience to ask you questions. Thank you. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Viking Air is a very unique commodity on Vancouver Island. We are the only aircraft manufacturer west of Ontario, which makes us unique. It also creates a lot of challenges when we go to recruit, when we go to grow our business, and it makes us less responsive to the opportunities that are given. Because it takes us a long time to sort of get people on board, recruit, retain, and we become, as an industry, especially on Vancouver Island, less nimble. And as we all know in manufacturing, the quicker you can respond to a market demand, the better and the longer you got to get to that opportunity the fastest. And if you are spending 6 months typically in a recruitment cycle, it's too long. Your opportunity has gone and it is lost. So those have been challenges. Viking has built over 100 Twin Otters in the last 6-7 years, and we're very proud of that. We have an exceptional workforce. It has been difficult to find that workforce, and the type of workforce has changed. So when we were back in as I say, I've been with Viking for 19 years, so I've seen an evolution. And before we took on the manufacturing and the productionization of the Twin Otter, we had amazing tradespeople that worked for us. They were craftsmen. They would take a piece of metal and they'd look at it and they would think about it, and they did exceptional type of work. But when we started having to put an aircraft out the door every 2 weeks, we needed a different type of worker. And that worker does not exist on Vancouver Island. And the reason is that as an industry, so whether it's forestry or whatever the industry is, we don't have it ingrained into our Vancouver Island experience that we are manufacturers. And our workforce, I need people that are available on the island tomorrow that I can pull on that know about continuous improvement, that know about lean manufacturing, that have an idea that the better and the smarter and the more innovative we are in how we approach manufacturing, the more profitable we'll be, but we will gain more competitive advantages globally the smarter we think about manufacturing. And that just is not a concept that we are finding locally on the island. And it puts us as an industry and as the Vancouver Island economy at a disadvantage. And that's my passion. My passion is that I believe in Vancouver Island, we have the talent and the skills and we have the companies. What we need is a excitement about and an education and early training about how to be competitive. And I think that if we can provide that and work as industries and manufacturing sectors, that we all benefit from that type of an education that was happening locally. And that's my passion. So I could talk forever about Viking and different things, but I'll leave it there, and if there's any other questions, I'll take them after.
Great. Gary Powers with Promac, and we're located at Duncan. We have about 60 employees. I decided to, first of all, move to the island because I wanted to be here, first and foremost, and then found a...
Bring it forward.
Oh, and then found an opportunity to, there we go, and tried to find an opportunity to actually utilize my skills and make this a place sustainable for me, my family. So came across Promac, and one of the things that struck me about the industry here on Vancouver Island and Promac in particular is it's like when I walked in the door, everybody was very humble and didn't really kind of, in my mind, understand how capable and how much potential there was in the industry. And I think it spoke to the craftsman kind of mentality that was also maybe the older Viking. And what I see as an opportunity for companies like Promac, and there's probably a whole bunch of other examples of that, is taking that real good foundation of trade skill and engineering skill that we have and expanding on it and actually creating more and more opportunity. I can certainly see some of the manufacturing mentality is not necessarily ingrained, but it's people want to do the right thing, and it needs to be trained, and there needs to be some innovation on that side of it. Lean manufacturing is something that we found is not really very prevalent, and it was one thing that I know that Viking and others embrace. And when we're talking about soft skills earlier and that kind of thing, that's the type of stuff that really will make us leaders overall as an industry. And at Promac, we're embracing that, and we're moving down that path. It's not going to be easy because we've got to train everybody, including myself, and Scott is here with my general manager, and we've got all this this potential that we need to harness. So, anyway, so I'll leave it at that. And by the way, we work closely with Doug, so I'll be gentle on you, as he's one of our.
Questions from the audience? Yes, there's got to be. Folks, some questions? Okay. Well, you can try to yell it, or I can get you this
one. For the speaker. You mentioned that part of your development over the time in the company was through, creativity. So how do you build that into your sort of daily or weekly work schedule and you have meetings and you sort of promote creativity and innovation with your workforce?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, at the end of the day, every single employee that works on a piece of machinery knows it inside and out. Myself as a manager, I don't specifically work on that machinery, so I rely on them to come to me. When you ask them, what makes your job easier? What do you think? Is there something we can do to make this run faster, to run more efficiently, to get more recovery in our logs? Usually they've got all the answers. Some of them you kind of take with a grain of salt, but usually out of all of that, you come up with an idea. The other part of that is staying in touch with what's going on out there, understanding what's going on in the forest industry in Europe, in Asia, in Southeast Asia, in South America, and understanding the technology that's there and all that, and bringing that back, bringing the thoughts and the literature and the ideas back, and sitting down with the employees and saying, hey, what if we had something like this? What do you think? And so that interaction needs to happen on a daily basis, or as much as possible.
Hi, my name is Patrick Marshall. I always got confused why we had golf academies and baseball academies in our junior high schools and high schools, and I was witness to the truck loggers investing in a high school in Campbell River and a high school in Port Alberni. And we have a high school here in the South Island, Parkland, that's got a focus on marine. Can you give us some idea on some of the ideas maybe you've looked at? Because you talked about the culture not being in manufacturing and processing on the coast and having to import some of that. But how do you see your companies? My kids, I chose in grade 6 to go into late immersion French. Can we make those same choices for our kids to be exposed to manufacturing and processing? And I don't know why I would put my kid in a baseball or a hockey academy. It just doesn't make sense.
I'm very proud that we have worked with Vic High. So unfortunately, we can't kind of work with all schools, but we have put aviation program into that high school. And very proudly, we have, for 2 years now, we've had groups of high school students come and do co-op work with us. They start with the flying club, and they learn kind of all aspects of flight, first of all, and then they come to Viking and they work, and we job share them for a period of time. I think it was 6 weeks, and they complete a project. So I believe that is where it starts. The other program that I think that we can try and work harder with is the Air Cadet program for our industry. What we know about aerospace is that the people that want to be in aerospace love airplanes, and that is just the bottom line. And the more people love airplanes, the more attracted they are to the industry, and the more they want to work with them forever. So when we look for, we know we can't hire specifically for the skills, like 100%, they're just not here. What I do hire for is people who are passionate about aviation, passionate about airplanes, whose grandfather flew a Twin Otter or flew in a Twin Otter, or who has a story about an aunt who flew in a Twin Otter 20 years ago. Those are the people who are attracted to our industry. So we do hire based on that attitude and that I want to work, because I know you said that your business isn't sexy, ours is. So I try to leverage that as much as possible. But yeah, it's a great point. And just as a counter to that, I know down in Seattle that they do have in a high school, and in the high school program, what they call manufacturing skills. And they teach lean manufacturing. They go through, and there is, at a very early intervention, there is the concept. In a big manufacturing center, they are able to do that, and they teach all of those basic manufacturing concepts.
And we've got one over here.
Yep.
No, I'm okay. No.
I have a question for either one of the three of you. We talked about the entry-level positions and training. What about the first layer of management? Do you do in-house management training, or do you leverage outside services? Or?
Yeah, most of it's in-house. We do bring in outside sources to do some basic training on that. It's difficult. I say that with a very cautiously, because one of the most important assets is your frontline supervisors, and they do have the toughest position in any organization. But it's very difficult to pull in the resources to be able to put on full-on programs for that. So, you know, typically once a year we pick and choose different programs that we'll send a couple to and work towards that. So.
And as Promac, we're a pretty small company, so we only have a certain level of, I think we're mostly here actually. So there's not much middle management.
We have, in the past, kind of depends how busy and how many dollars we have to apply to training. It sort of goes like this. We have done, through Camosun, I have done leadership development training for all upcoming or identified what we call high POTS, high potential employees. We've been able to put them through Camosun training. We do coaching sessions. We've kind of moved to a more one-on-one individual coaching to get more benefit. It's a tricky one because we don't find we're hiring people with supervisor experience. We are either promoting them from a charge hand position on our production floor up, which is probably the most difficult place you will ever be, is managing people who used to be your peers. And we're finding that my experience is that we have to provide more training at that level, because it's a really tough position to be. I don't find, though, that there's a lot of opportunities on the island again from that point of view. So we are sourcing that as much as we are. So yeah, if that answers your question, yeah.
We had a gentleman back here who wanted to participate in an earlier question. So here.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on what this gentleman over here was saying about the golf academy and the baseball academy, and about how to light the excitement and the passion in the youth for this type of stuff. And so I'm going to put my question in the form of a request. I would like to request all of your companies to become big corporate sponsors for your community makerspaces, where kids go and learn how to program PLCs for fun, so that when they grow up, they can drive your business with them.
Good suggestion.
We'll put all of those interested companies beside the insert fundraising table back here. Makerspace. We've had an opportunity to hear about the makerspace environment across the island. It's not as fully developed as it could be, and we would like to see it begin to integrate more into into companies' activities. The sort of more formal, developed makerspace activity, one could argue, was the one we just came back from. And that being the relationship between the college and Babcock. That is an industry student place to do makerspace stuff. So we need to find ways to build many more of those across the island. So thank you for pointing that out. At least not at that level, but a makerspace level. Any more questions? Can you? Oh, hold on. You'll need. Yeah. I can kind of hear you, but I can't.
It was mentioned that training gets tricky, especially depending on the funds available. And that's one of the things that I've always found challenging in any industry, any company. So what do you guys do when it gets that tricky? Because the training needs to happen, whether you're slow or really busy. If the training is not there, we're constantly fighting the same battle, and it's just a vicious cycle, right? So does anybody have any answers? Because yes, it requires money, but maybe helping within the industry, different companies and so on, along with the work with institutions, educational institutions, something could be done, right?
Oh, go ahead.
No, the only thing I'm going to say is that absolutely it requires money, it requires the resources. So management training is one thing, but when I look at specific skills training, so we talk about PLC training, for us to send one of our young electricians to get the PLC training, we're not a big workforce. So to send that one electrician off, it impacts the business. So to send them to Alberta for 3-4 weeks to take this program, is a very big hit to the company. Not the monetary part is one thing, but the actual business interruption. So should we need that manpower for whatever reasons, because we're not a large manpower heavy company that way. So those are some of the challenges that way, without having local resources to facilitate the training and.
Yeah, and from our point of view, we're in a highly regulated industry, so there's mandatory training, which is just mandatory, and that's not up for question. Then there's that soft training that we've been talking about for a long time, and businesses are in a difficult position. We need to get the margins out of the business. We want to be good employers. We want good and happy people. We want productive people. So those are always, so I guess that comes back to when you are going to invest money in training, there needs to be a return on that investment. And employers need to understand in business terms, what that ROI is. And it also is up to the educators to provide that ROI. So that training, it's worth, when we make training decisions, they're expensive. We take a lot of care in choosing proper training that is going to help the business. And the programs have to deliver on what business needs.
So I'm sure most of you are aware in the audience that the Canada Jobs Grant does fund up to 2/3 of your training. So there is that option. It is becoming very subscribed very quickly. I think this year, or this September, in 2 weeks, it was already full for training January to April. But they do it every quarter, and it's an opportunity to have up to $10,000 paid for by the government. So you pay 1/3, they pay 2/3. And if you're hiring people and you guarantee them 52 weeks of work, they will pay the full shot. So there is that option. I hear what you're saying, Doug, about having, releasing someone from work for 4 or 5 weeks when you have a small skeletal staff. That's difficult. But certainly in terms of training, there is an option available for funding.
Yeah, and I really applaud that. We use that program, and
Yeah, I think the the monetary part aside, I think it's just the challenge of logistically getting to the training and providing that training. One of the questions I have for most of the educational institutes, Susan, VIU is one of the only institutes that's actually interacted with our particular company about what our needs are. And so my question is why doesn't that happen more regularly? Why doesn't that interaction for local industry and what's going on in Vancouver Island, why isn't it that a priority for the educational institutes to understand that the needs of the local industry and to provide that training? And I understand that some particular positions or training opportunities aren't heavy in terms of people that want it, but there's got to be other opportunities available. So my question to the educational institutes is why isn't there more coming to the industry and asking what the needs are?
Well, on that note, we'll end things, because I think we could get into a little cycle of discussion, but it is 2:00. And we are moving on to our next speaker. So thank you to all three of you. And we're going to, before you sit down, we're going to have Seriously Creative take a picture of you with our sign. With the sign or not? with the innovation. Oh, it's right over here. So if you don't mind coming over here as we get set up for David from Viking. So our final sponsor, South Island Prosperity Project. Is Dallas here? Yes, thank you. I think you just got off a plane from China, from the trip. Fantastic, did it go well? Yeah? SIP is a regional economic development agency representing the South Island. Their mission is to facilitate and promote the development of a strong, regionally diversified economy in South Vancouver Island. This vision, their vision is one of a collaborative region that is a vibrant place to live and work for everyone in the South Island region. So like we are like all on the same page. We believe that fully. And you and I have been kicking this ball around for a long time, and great work on getting everyone into the same room. Well done. Emily couldn't be here, jet lag? Sick kid, yeah. Thanks for all your help. Fantastic. SIP, thank you. Our next keynote is David. Dave or David? How do you prefer? Dave. Depends what. Dave Curtis. Right. Or not. We're very lucky to have Dave Curtis, President, CEO of Viking Air Limited and Longview Aviation Capital. David's aviation career started with commercial flight training in '83, during which time he joined Viking. '83. David holds various pilot certificates and routinely flies a float equipped with de Havilland Beaver aircraft. A float equipped de Havilland Beaver aircraft, sorry. During his career at Viking, he has served in various capacities, and in '91 was named president and CEO. And under his leadership, Viking has grown into a multidisciplinary aerospace manufacturer with operations in both Victoria and Calgary, with 2015 revenues exceeding 250 mil and employees exceeding 600. David is the past chair of the board of the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada. AIAC is the national association representing Canada's aerospace manufacturing and services sector. As the world's 5th largest aerospace industry, Canada's aerospace sector provides nearly 28 billion to the economy and GDP, exports nearly 80% of its output, and dedicates over 20% of its activity to R&D. Aerospace is responsible for the employment of 172,000 Canadians. AIAC represents the interests of over 700 aerospace companies across Canada. David is also part of the Trademark of Excellence campaign through the Camosun College Foundation. Boom, they're up there. Yes. You get free lunch for that. And has raised 4.5 mil to support new trades, equipment, and facilities for this complex. So there's no doubt you guys are an absolute manufacturing leader in our region. We're very lucky to have you here. David's title today will be Leveraging Innovation to Grow Western Canada's Aerospace Supply Chain. But one quick story. I remember in the snowstorm of Lower Vancouver Island, I think it was '06, 96. Yeah, I was 3-4 years old. And I recall Czech TV or something showing your facilities, and half the facilities had been crushed by the snow. And there was David with a few folks going, well, we're going to come out of this. We're going to survive. We're going to get through this. And I thought, yeah, right. I doubt it. And look at you now, a global leader. Congratulations. What a great team. So let's listen to David Curtis, CEO of Viking Air, leveraging innovation to grow Western Canada's aerospace supply chain.
Well, John, I'm hardly worthy of all that. And Barry and John chased me like, I don't know if I use the term rabid dogs to say you have to be here.
We're excellent pit bulls.
And my assistant Amber chased me down to make sure. And I learned something every day. And I've learned that, Doug, wherever Doug is, your presentation was going to be much better than mine because you used pictures. What I've had to do, I was speaking at the Aircraft Builders Conference in San Francisco last week, and I just got back from France where I was talking to our operators, European operators. So I took those presentations and kind of made them all into one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move through fairly quickly. There's just 2 or 3 key themes that I want to get across about how can we build an aerospace industry in Western Canada. And so I apologize for all the words. I will try and pull out what I need to, and hopefully that'll work for you. I want to talk just from an agenda point of view. You heard John talk about Longview Aviation Capital. I'll talk about who that is. You may have seen on the highway when you're driving out Pat Bay, you see Longview Farms. We are related, but Longview means our investment horizon. And I got to tell you, in aviation or aerospace, you better have a long horizon because this is not private equity kind of returns. It's a very long view. So we have that, and we're very proud of Western Canada and certainly Vancouver Island. I'll talk a little bit about a KPMG economic impact study for the aerospace industry because that's important. I'm going to talk about the aerospace landscape today in BC. I want to talk about this notion of an aerospace cluster, how we're going to use leverage that to build an industry in Western Canada that can ultimately stand on its own. How does Viking strategy fit into that? And what my key takeaways, and then hopefully I'll have some time for some questions. So I'm going to whip through this pretty quick. I know it's a smart group, and we'll take lots of questions, and I'll point you. John will be able to show you how to get a hold of me, or Robin certainly is a key member of our team, and also in the back is Dominique Sprague. He's our VP of Strategy, who's leading a lot of our Chinese work and helping me with a bunch of key projects. So, Longview Aviation Capital, this is a company that owns Viking. We also have Pacific Sky. I'm going to talk, hopefully have a little bit of time. I've got a short video I want to show you at the end. Pacific Sky is our flight training, aircraft delivery company, and we've just invested close to $18 million in a Twin Otter Level D flight simulator. That's Pacific Skies. And then we have an asset management company that we lease, finance, sell aircraft, and that's called Longview Aviation Asset Management. I'm going to point you to, John mentioned Aerospace Industries Association of Canada. If you go to their website, you'll be able to pull down this KPMG study that was done in 2015 that talks about those key things we need to do to grow BC's aerospace industry. If you can't find it, blast me a note or John, and we'll get you the link. But I pulled out of that because there's some important messages that I want to try and get across today. So what is BC? Again, this is an eye chart, and this is the manufacturing. So when you talk about aerospace, some folks lump in airlines, they lump in maintenance, they lump in all sorts of things. But when we talk about purely manufacturing, BC is about 600 million, of which Viking is expected to be almost half of that. So you see there's lots of upside. It's Quebec, it's Ontario, and then it's BC. So we're third. If you look at Alberta, not a lot, but Winnipeg, Manitoba has a fairly active, Boeing's there, got a big center. But there's lots of opportunity for us to, I like to say, drag the center of gravity of the aerospace industry a little bit further west. I want to show you how we're going to do that. But the key message, so this is again right out of the KPMG report, is that you need an OEM in order to foster that growth. So if you think about Montreal, Quebec, they have Montreal Aerospace, it's Bombardier, it's Pratt & Whitney, it's Bell Helicopter that drive that supply chain. And that's why Quebec and the investment that the government of Quebec has made and continues to make, as we're all reading about, in the aerospace sector, because the jobs are very high value added and it develops a supply chain. So the key thing is we need OEMs, and of which Viking is the only one, as Robin mentioned, west of Ontario. So here we are. This is a major opportunity. We're an OEM. So there's just no scale from a supply chain point of view in BC. I'm going to, part of when we put the Twin Otter back into production, we still have a lot of supply chain that's in Eastern Canada because that's where we had to go. And I'm going to talk about our next project where I think we have an opportunity to really make Western Canada sing, if you will, from an aerospace manufacturing point of view. So when you talk to, we've got a gentleman from Airbus here. I've sat on these round tables many, many times, and the challenge is that Airbus or Boeing want to put business into a certain region, but they can't handle dealing with 100 SMEs, small, medium enterprises. It's too expensive, they can't manage them. They need a more consolidated supply chain in order to be able to come in and see the work put. And I can tell you that Airbus has obligations, IRBs, that are required because of their sale of their products to Canada, where they have to put work back into Canada somehow. And but they can't deal, this isn't a nucleus of the supply chain for aerospace in Western Canada where they can go and satisfy those IRBs. So again, we have an opportunity. OEM, Western Canada, will drive the supply chain. Again, more words. What I'm trying to do is just, one of the things, I'm just going to skip right forward here. This is the supply chain for aerospace. If we try to talk about superclusters or clusters, you can't build it from the bottom up. You can't build a shipbuilding industry by getting a bunch of metal suppliers together and hope that you're going to build a ship. You need the manufacturer, you need the industry to start driving that supply chain. So at the very top is the OEM. So today you have one OEM, it's Viking, and we build Twin Otters, and I hope we're going to build another product here, and we're going to leverage, what I learned was that, in the Twin Otter relaunch, we couldn't be that altruistic. We just had to get it done. And we had a lot of people saying you probably can't do it. So we had to be very, very safe with our supply chain. So machine shop, there's a machine shop here in Victoria. Maybe didn't have the quality systems and we could put some work into them to bring them up to be aerospace suppliers. But the easy thing to do is deal with the folks in Toronto and Montreal. They know what to do, they've got the processes, and they could deliver the part. Well, now we've got another opportunity, which I'll talk about, where I think we can really develop our Western Canadian supply chain. We know what we need to do, and we're gonna do that. But you can't do it from the bottom up. You gotta have the OEM or the tier ones pulling that into that supply chain. So what's our strategy? I'm gonna get into our next product, and then I want to talk about how we think that'll help the industry. How many people here know what a CL415 is? There's 3. How many people know what a Martin Mars is? Lots. Okay, so the CL415 is the only production aerial firefighting aircraft in the world. Canada has 60 of them. There's about 100 of them operating in Europe, where I've just come from, and they're the backbone of aerial firefighting across the globe. The Mars is a wonderful airplane. It was built to carry troops from San Francisco to Hawaii, and it was converted by Viking to be a water bomber, and has been operated out of Sprout Lake. So We acquired this program from Bombardier last year, and we've been working diligently to get the product support business going again, and now we might have an opportunity to produce these airplanes. It's the same size as a 737. This is not a Twin Otter. It's a big airplane. So it evolved, originally designed in '66, then the 415 came along in '94, and then there's some variants, Maritime Patrol, there's one or two in Malaysia. So about 170, mostly Canada, Europe, some in Southeast Asia, and Croatia, Morocco operate them as well. So we're gonna bring the next evolution, again, small chart, but this is gonna be what we're calling the 515, which is the next, the Series 400 Twin Otter, the CL-515 Bombardier aerial firefighting aircraft. What's the value proposition? Why this over the Mars? In a 10 nautical mile radius of a water source, you can hammer the fire for 4 hours with water and retardant at about 4 times the rate of a land-based aerial firefighter. So you don't have to go back to land, fill up, and go to the site of the fire. You can pick up, Dom, how many liters is it again? It's 6,132 liters in 12 seconds. And that's on, depending where the fire is. So it's, in that environment, it's probably the best aerial firefighter in the world. You can have 737 with tanks on it. It's great, it comes in. They have to clear the hillside of people because it's a ton of weight. You drop a 747 load of water on the hillside, then it goes back, and for many of you who've been on an airliner, it's kind of a process to get the airplane down and parked and connected and refueled and all this kind of stuff. Well, our little airplane is meanwhile going back and forth. So that's the value proposition of the airplane. I'll talk about what's the value proposition of producing that airplane in Western Canada. Well, right away, it's 900 direct jobs. Ms. Ambrose has got to figure out how we're going to get 900 people in 24 months, 18 months. That'll induce in the supply chain about 2,000. It's a compelling opportunity for Western Canada. Why are we doing this? You may have read Viking, we produce Twin Otters, we produce one every 15 days. We've delivered over 120 of them, and we were selling them at a rate that was faster than our production for quite a while, and then it turned around. And we were building them faster than we could sell them. So we had to slow our production rate down. We took a 90-day pause, and we've now restarted production. November 1, we're going back at it. We're bringing all our folks back. But lesson for Dave and our team, single product company. We need to diversify. And that's why we went after an aircraft that could fit in that utility wheelhouse that we're in. And it diversifies our labor force. So very, very key for us strategically to grab that next product. I'm not going to talk, these are, again, I pulled this right out of our presentation to the operator group about what we're up to. This is the differences between the old airplane and the new one. We're going to invest over the course of the next probably 24 months about $400 million to get this program going. It's significant, and it's going to mean as I say, it's a significant opportunity for Western Canada. So how are we going to innovate? The question I get most often is, how can we fight fires at night? How can we take these assets that are parked in California, Portugal, Chile, Italy had a tremendously terrible fire season, and BC had our worst in 60 years. How are we going to use these assets to fight at night? Well, Part of the innovation is going to be heads-up displays, night vision systems. You're not going to be scooping water, I'll tell you, at night, but you certainly can land-base the airplane and utilize it to fight fires at dusk and when in low light conditions. I can tell you they're flying a lot of stuff in the military. The technology is there, and there's some huge opportunities around a modernized cockpit. Synthetic vision, all these things that we think are big opportunities. My other challenge is we've just heard about how hard it is to hire people. I'm throwing numbers like 900 folks. Well, we need to optimize how we build this airplane. And when Bombardier built it, there were 64 different manufacturing stages for the aircraft. And for those of you that are working in Lean or Six Sigma, every time you move something is wasted. It's non-value added. So you need to understand how are you going to produce this airplane using innovative production techniques that are going to reduce your cycle time. So not only is it complex in the number of stages, but it's expensive because that requires something in the order of 7 airplanes in production at one time. And what that means to anybody that's operating a business is cash. It's all cash that you've got tied up. So we've got to be innovative. We've got to reduce the cycle time. I'm absolutely convinced that a manufacturer on Vancouver Island can be best in class. We do it. We don't, yes, being on an island is expensive, but we can compete with anybody in the aerospace industry globally. You're seeing a trend where the aerospace industry got drunk, I like to say, on low-cost sourcing. They pushed things to Mexico and China and all around to try and take advantage of the low cost. But those economies are starting to come up. Costs are coming up. Now you start to think about what's my execution risk with that kind of supply chain. Whether it's geopolitical issues, I mean, we talk about Russia or China or all these emerging markets, there's always something that can be a challenge or risk to your supply chain. So you're starting to see insourcing. You're starting to see a lot of this work start coming back. So we think that we can build a vertically integrated aerospace manufacturing company that's world class, but we're going to have to apply some innovation. Requires lots of space. 100-foot wingspan, one piece. It's a big monster. So we're going to do that, same model, Victoria and Calgary, and we'll bring the airplanes back here for flight testing because this little environmental problem in Calgary is the water gets hard. So we're going to have to flight test those airplanes and scoop water out here on the coast to assure our customers that they perform. So lots of factory space. So here's what we need to do. This is the learning curve. Any product that you manufacture, there's a formula that you use that says every time you double rate, you get 15% reduction in labor costs. So your first airplane versus your second airplane, or second widget, 15% less. Aircraft 4, 15% less. Aircraft 8, 16, 32, etc. And that's why the curve flattens out. Our challenge is, this is a low-rate production airplane. Bombardier, the most they ever sold in 1 year was 5. We built a plan around 4. We know we can execute it. But if I just rely on normal production, 64 stages, all this kind of stuff, we don't get back on the beach. And when I mean back on the beach, I mean positive cash flow for a decade. Hence, long view. Now, we can handle some of that, but if you wonder why governments get involved in funding aerospace, I know it's a hot topic, it's because the investments are massive, read $400 million bucks, and the return is a decade out. The benefits are high value add jobs. Our average wage at Viking is about 80 grand with overtime and things. We got 600 folks. They're buying houses, they're reinvesting in the economy. So these are the fundamentals around how do we get this thing kick-started. So learning curve, we need to apply innovation, we need to drive it around continuous improvement, we need an 80% learn curve. And I can tell you, Dom and I have had these debates, 5% reduction in learning curve is what, $100 million over our program. It's significant. The other thing that I think is going to disrupt our industry, and you saw it in the trade show, there's additive manufacturing. There's a fellow down there that's making parts for classic cars or antique cars. They're now printing aircraft parts. And GE's coming out with a competitive turboprop where 60% of the components of the engine are printed. This is game-changing for a company like Viking or a product like the 415 where it's low volume. You don't need the tools. You can model it, you can print it. So they're printing in titanium, they're printing in aluminum, they're printing in composites. And we see this as a massive opportunity to drive the labor out and the cycle time of producing this airplane. So huge innovation opportunity around additive manufacturing for us. So what are we going to do? We're in the business planning process. I'm talking to government, talking to investors, talking to customers. We're hope that we'll be able to make a decision to go in 2018, and then it's a 4-year ramp-up program before the first aircraft comes out. Why do I think we can do it? Because I've got fantastic folks like Robin and all the folks that she's hired. We announced an airplane that we were going to produce a Twin Otter in 2007, delivered our first one 3 years later in 2010, and so far since then have delivered 120 aircraft. So we know we can do it. We're going to be a little bit more Western Canadian focused, if you will. I think this is I'm not going to say my last kick, but it's a big project. And I think that we have an opportunity to do something that wood products and mining are the backbone of BC. Oil is the backbone of Alberta, but we have an opportunity here to diversify some of our economy to be making some stuff. It's clean, high value add, and global warming is probably not going to change. I think we've got to invest in these assets as part of a strategy. And if we can make it here in Western Canada, I think that's wonderful. So, key takeaways. Developing a robust aerospace supply chain needs an OEM or a tier 1 integrator. I want to say innovation doesn't have to be disrupting. I've talked about it. But innovation starts at the shop floor. It's baby steps. We have continuous improvement programs. Our teams meet every morning, Robin, 7 a.m. I can tell you, they're looking at opportunities every day. We have an opportunity board. We're driving that stuff, standard work. Look at it every day. Aerospace is typically innovation adverse, a lot of risks. You don't necessarily want to jump on an airplane that's got some prototype engine on it. It takes a long time to certify this stuff. So we tend to be last to adopt. But as I say, I believe this additive manufacturing is going to be a significant opportunity for us. The other takeaway is, take a solid design like the Twin Otter, innovate, sell it, you rejuvenate the product life cycle, and we've generated over $1 billion in sales for that manufactured product in 7 years. Something was designed in 1965. Robin mentioned the number of times I hear my grandmother flew on that airplane. I just saw a story that somebody had their child on a Twin Otter. It is kind of part of the Canadian psyche, these bush planes, but we've taken it, applied some innovation. I think that we have a huge opportunity to be the aerial firefighting capital of the world. Not only Conair, you saw Conair's involved, but in actually operating the airplanes, but I think too there's an opportunity now to manufacture them. So I think I don't know that we could be number one in Canada for aerospace. Maybe. Bombardier's doing some strange things. But for sure, number two, I think we have an opportunity for Western Canada. Now, what I do want to do, so I'll take some questions. My time is not bad. I'd like to, if I can get some technical help, I'd like to show a video that my guys, they just, oh no, here's Curtis again. We're coming back, we're just certifying our level D flight simulator. And if you don't quite run it yet. A level D simulator is, fidelity-wise, you don't need the airplane. It is the airplane. If any of you don't have your pilot's license and you could afford it and wanted to learn how to fly, get your twin engine rating. In this simulator, it qualifies as the airplane. So the fidelity, we flew some 200 hours with sensors on our Twin Otter to get the software that we could put into this thing. So it's done all over the world. There's simulators for 747s, and as you can imagine, you don't see many 747s kind of flying the pattern while they're training. They do those in the simulator, and then crews have to come and get recurrent training. Our innovation on this particular simulator was we see a huge opportunity for seaplanes in emerging markets. Let's talk about China. You take the coastline and the waterways, and the opportunities are massive. We have a factory that's world class. We have headroom. We could probably build 4 Twin Otters, one every 4 days, 4 a month. But I can't get trained crew. There is no way that we can train seaplane pilots as fast as we can build them or what we think our market's going to be. So where's the innovation? We worked with the National Research Council, instrumented the airplane on float, spent another 250 hours flying to cost about $5 million to develop the world's first seaplane trainer. We're going to eliminate that training constraint. Transport Canada doesn't even know what to do with it yet. EASA, European Aviation Safety Administration, has already announced that they're going to come and certify it as a seaplane trainer. Heard last week that China's coming to certify it. So we think we've got a pretty cool, innovative tool. And I can tell you, so on the way home, I was thinking about innovation, and I was getting kind of our project updates, and I went, holy, I need to talk about our simulator. And so the guys are there with the manufacturer. They're trying to get this thing locked down, and Curtis comes in with an email. Hey, can you get me a video of it flying on floats? And I could just imagine that. So at about midnight last night, I got a link to a piece, and I've got a couple of brand new CL415 hats. One goes to John for putting on a great program. And the other one, I want you to guess, the first person to guess, where is this airplane flying? Okay? And John, you get to be the one that figures out who gets it right.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if we can start this, and it's you know, it's a little, it's only 2 minutes. It seems it's a simulator. You're flying in an airplane over ground, okay? So this is the flight deck. It's a fully integrated. Those are four flat panel screens. It's almost 2 stories high. Okay? It's the simulator. Portage Inlet. No. Oak Bay's got noise sensitivity. It's a problem. No.
It's a simulator, and you can
So,
certify to fly.
so it's actually a cockpit of an airplane that's built inside big housing, and it's on big jacks. It's moving around. No.
No, that's a big piece of water coming in.
There's a landmark that'll come up that we're all very fond of, and who's flown seaplanes between Vancouver and Victoria? Lots. There's, what does that look like? Have a look at, when you get close in here, what that is. Any guesses? I think I've heard it already, yeah. So it's Victoria. Now they're coming in over the Blue Bridge, okay? As you start to get closer, you're going to start seeing the definition on the water and the graphics and the horsepower that goes into model water, let alone wind, current, all the things, is quite amazing. So you can start seeing it defined here. There's the delta. That's the coho up there. You can hear them putting it in reverse. And you'll see some spray come up as the floats are in the water. And quickly, there's a harbor ferry. So again, the challenges around flying float planes, it takes 3 years to become a competent captain riding in the airplane. We think we can reduce the cycle, or reduce the training cycle to about 1.5 years. Double the throughput for training of seaplane captains, which helps us ultimately sell an aircraft. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. We can set sea state 4. The simulator's banging around. It's not very comfortable, but very, very innovation.
I heard about half a dozen folks say Victoria.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, a lot of people are pointing to you. What a bunch of honest people in this place.
Congratulations, Eric.
It's in Calgary, actually. Yeah. The challenge with Victoria, is we're international folks. They need connections. Victoria is a great place to come, but there's no direct flights to Frankfurt or Shanghai. It just made sense for us.
So I've pretty much gushed about Viking Air a lot. Not sure what else to say. Great to hear you're trying best to stay on the West Coast. But no matter where you are, as long as you're in Canada, we're all benefiting. Jamie, did you want to come up and say a few words before we get to questions? I've worked with Jamie. Jamie's with Camosun Innovate's fantastic partner, and has a few words. Do you want to say a few words?
Yes, we just printed this out this morning for you, and here you go. For your future manufacturing of the 415, here you go.
So for those of us that still have trouble turning on a phone, stuff like that, like me, that's 3D printing we're talking about, okay? Not just sort of printing on a copier. Okay, questions? Questions? Okay, we're not that tired. Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. David, you mentioned onshoring your supply chain in Canada. What's the biggest challenge for you in doing that?
So the question is onshoring, and what's our biggest challenge? Depends on where, if you're talking Western Canada, you need, this is so cool. Thank you. You need quality systems, continuous improvement systems. It takes a fairly mature supplier to play in that aerospace world. And the requirements are sometimes onerous. So, we're going to have to work very closely, especially if we want to do this in Western Canada with that supply chain. We've talked to WD, Western Economic Development, Diversification, to help us, how are we going to build the supply chain? So that's the biggest challenge. Obviously, getting people is, number one. We're going to work with folks like Camosun. We've already been talking to them about their printing innovation. How are we going to leverage that? How could we partner with these different educational institutions to help us get there? But at people and developing the supply chain.
Well, it's maybe a follow-on to that question. Does this supply chain exist now, or it's going to have to be created?
There's about, again, the KPMG report, there's about 400 companies in BC that are in the aerospace supply chain, but they could be, overhauling pumps for Air Canada and this kind of stuff. So, WestJet's a major aerospace entity in Calgary, but in the manufacturing, there's probably 50 companies in BC that are true manufacturers. So we're going to expand that. The opportunity is there's lots of know-how. I mean, there are folks that are this close, and they're in manufacturing for oil and gas, or they're, where the quality requirements are still huge. And to make them, move them towards aerospace, if they got the patience, I think the diversity, I think we can do it. I think we can grow it.
Just to thank Viking Air, in 2006, you helped Campbell River host the Western Aerospace Alliance. And that effort helped 9 companies in Campbell River in the Comox Valley get qualified to host a materials management program at North Island College. So you've had really big impacts on other communities outside of the South Island. And I just want to acknowledge that so that those other communities can join forces with the South Island to really come in behind you and make that happen. Because nobody would have put the word aerospace against Campbell River at that time, including Kelowna Flight Craft and some of the other manufacturers.
And Sea Land Aviation is a great company in Campbell River. They make every flight control for the Twin Otter. and important part of our supply chain. North Island College, yeah. Yeah.
Don't be afraid. It's going to be okay. I'm Bruce Williams. I was one of the people that helped create the South Island Prosperity Project. So, John, thanks for the shout out to that group. I have a comment and I have a question. The comment, first of all, is something that hasn't come up among all the corporations here today, but in the model of economic development and growing a community and growing prosperity and creating good paying jobs like you are, is the community side, is the philanthropy side. So your name is up there and Viking's name is up there, but I just want to give a shout out to Viking, to you, Dave, and to Robin and the whole team, whose philanthropy has been a big part of growing this community. As your success has gone, so has your philanthropy. So thank you for that. You've made a big difference in doing that. The second one is a question that, God forbid this be political, but I'm a recovering media guy, so I ask these things once in a while. You talk about bringing in these great high-paying jobs, which is terrific. These are people that will have the capacity to enter the housing market and build a home and create a home. But you and some others on the peninsula for a long time have been working to open up the opportunity for housing to be created, especially on the Saanich Peninsula, so that employees for you and other people who have operations on the peninsula can live closer to where they work. Do you think that this might be a catalyst with this new project and the new employee base that you're creating to create more openings and the creation of housing on the peninsula? And that's not political, it's just a question.
No, I mean,
Thanks.
it's no surprise the cost of living is a significant barrier. Cost of housing is a significant barrier to attracting. I think Doug mentioned, we can't pay people more because they live in Victoria. We're competing globally. But there's no question. We've been very involved with John in the Sydney manufacturing, North Saanich, to encourage higher density, which means less cost. We have lost opportunity to hire folks. We're some out of Bowling, Winnipeg, first-rate folks that want to come, and they come here and they spend a weekend looking at real estate and realize that their 5 acres on the river in Winnipeg is a condo here. And so it's a challenge. So the only thing we can do is continually work with our government stakeholders, local stakeholders, to impress upon them that density isn't a bad thing. It helps. It's going to help us to attract folks.
You were talking about with the potential of this new business line coming to Viking, the potential of 900 direct jobs. I'm wondering if you have just a high-level thumbnail sketch of sort of what categories of jobs those are, technicals, trades, business-type jobs.
Okay, this is going to test me because this is the expert here. It's all across our platform. So whether you're aerospace, sheet metal fabrication, to engineering, to quality disciplines, to mid-level management across the organization. I would say all boats float with a rising tide. So I could see us that it'll be across all disciplines within our organization. So, but the majority are fabrication folks. Skilled technicians working with aluminum. It's a big aluminum airplane. It's 70,000 man-hours to produce one.
Sure. And then that'll be our last question.
Yeah, Dave, just a couple of questions, and I'm not going to get into the politics side because John loves that, right? You're talking about this new aircraft. You have the facility here, the space to actually construct it here?
So, Bill, we have a significant amount of headroom or capacity in our production side, so you don't need to keep adding bricks and mortar and fixed costs, right? You have to be very careful with that. But we have a considerable amount of headroom in our fab shops here in Victoria. We had to, right now the Twin Otter wing gets, every 15 days, there's a truckload that leaves Viking and goes to Calgary. oh, we can't do that model with it. This is a 100-foot one-piece wing. So we have about 400,000 square feet in Calgary. So combined between Victoria and our Calgary operations, we'll be able to manufacture the airplane. We have the facilities we need today.
I just one quick question. Talking about innovation, the additive manufacturing, is anybody in the aircraft industry actually using it today? Or just looking at the regulatory?
Well, so as I mentioned, General Electric is producing in the development phase of a new turboprop that's competitive with the PT6. And is it 60 part numbers or 60%? 60% of the engine is printed. We're poking around. There's some interesting titanium. There's a number of different technologies, in this. It's not, I can't see that we'll be printing a full airplane for a while, but they're focusing on the expensive alloys right now, like titanium. Rather than milling a block or forming a block, they're additive manufacturing, they're growing it. So not a lot of titanium in this, but certainly lots of ducting and things that we think we can change the material process on.
Quick add-on to Bruce's question. In my capacity helping organize Sydney North Saanich Industrial Group, affordable workforce housing was our #1 issue. Folks ask companies how they're going to solve that. Well, they have some role, but the solution exists with the councillors. They are the landlords. And as we now know more than ever in our life experience, elections matter. So next November, if this is a key issue for your company, you get out and you ask councillors, what are they going to do about it? They control the density. They control the density. That's how easy it is. They can change the solution for this issue of affordable housing. It's remarkable to me that in the election in Vancouver about 2 weeks ago, in one of the most expensive places in the world to live, 10% or less of the people voted. So, we got to look in the mirror a little bit here. If we need affordable housing, we need to get active and tell people who change the rules around density. David, thank you so much. Thank you, Viking Air. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Whoop. I have been losing my poor speakers around me all day. So let's give a large hand for Dave. Six hours ago, when we started, we sat here and said, the discussion today will revolve around really nothing less than solving the future of work. I think we did a tiny little bit. That's a big objective, but we got a little hit on that. And so, for the future, we don't just stop here. We don't just stop and have more discussion, and we don't just stop and have more of these, although they're very helpful. We're going to try to solve some of the problems that were identified today, and that's really key, taking conversation to solution. And so certainly Barry and I will be involved. Having you all together makes a big difference. I think there have been some key relationship stuff happening all throughout the day that really works. So when we meet again, we're going to try to demonstrate that we're moving towards solution, okay? We're not just talking about this all the time, but trying to solve it. These labor market issues that are directly impacting the manufacturing industry on Vancouver Island. We will have the live stream, it's recorded, so we will send it out to everyone on the list. If I don't have your email address, let me know. We've had a nice buzz on social media. thanks to these great folks at Seriously Creative. And we've had a great team of people helping organize the day. So we will move towards solution, all right? I promise you that. I think every one of you are probably committed to that, and I appreciate that. We have and would ask you to fill out an evaluation of what you think of today. There is a link on these screens. We would appreciate if you write just how absolutely great today was. Thank you very much, folks. Until we see you again, have a good afternoon.
Thank you.